We recap an eventful weekend and what happened out there on the West Coast road trip for Charlotte. Draymond Green has some comments about how the Hornets are blatantly tanking. Do you agree with Draymond Green? We'll talk about it coming up next on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson. Find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. He's also behind the scenes producing Yahoo Sports Daily with Jason Fitz and Caroline Fenton. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Sports Radio 92.7 FM. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern. Again, we appreciate FanDuel for helping us out on the number one sports podcast network out there, the Locked On Podcast Network. Let's get into it. Hornets, West Coast road trip. Doug, they come back with a 3-2 record. Let me tell you, I'm thrilled. They got 3 victories. What are you looking for over there? I didn't know.
I'm looking. So right. I did some research. Mm-hmm. I did my own research because I was curious when the last time the Hornets came away from one of these West Coast roadies with a winning record. And so I went to the schedule on ESPN and I did a little digging. And you have to go all the way back to the 17-18 season to find a West Coast road trip of 4 games or greater, because there was a little dinky 3-game that they did 2-1. I believe that was in 23-24, but I'm not counting that. You got to go out there. You got to stay out there. 4 games, that's the typical West Coast road trip. And the Hornets went 3-1 in 17-18. Those were the Dwight Howard Hornets. Dwight Howard, Kimball Walker leading the Hornets to a 3-1 record. But yeah, I mean, 0-5 in 24-25, 1-4, 2-4, 1-4, 2-4. They did it in 2021, which was that Borrego decent season. They went 3-3. So they at least went 500. And in 19-20, they went 500. But 17-18, you have to go back to get a winning West Coast roadie. Crazy.
I think I did a solo episode before they took their trip, and I said I just wanted 2 wins. If you come back 2-3, I'm happy. If you give me 3, then I'm thrilled. And we got 3. I didn't expect Denver to sit everybody. Even still, I'm glad that the Hornets destroyed Denver when they sat everybody. But that's what you have to do, right? If they would have won by a bucket, then maybe you could just completely negate that victory. But that game was over as soon as the ball was up in the air for tip. Not to mention, I will say, that same style Denver team, they did beat Philly earlier this year in what was a wonky victory for them without having any of their stars. Not so much here against the Hornets. So again, they have the 5-game West Coast roadie. You talked about it. Hornets, they go 3-2. It started with the win against the Jazz where they won 150-95. If they won, it was basically by 20 points. If they lost, it was about by 10. Not a blowout. I guess they did get beat by 20 against Golden State. But the first West Coast road game they lost on this trip was 117-109 to the Clippers. Stayed out there all week long. Had a really impressive victory over the Lakers. Lost to the Warriors 136-116. End up beating the Nuggets yesterday 110-87. Your thoughts on the West Coast road trip, a winning West Coast road trip?
That was great. I mean, it just goes to show you that the Hornets are fielding a serious basketball team. Now, they're still doing a little shenanigans with LaMelo Ball coming off the bench. I'm a little skeptical about how sustainable that is. If the Hornets were truly serious about making a push to the play-in, if they were truly, how much can they sustain that? Because it was obvious when he came off the bench how it affected their ability to start that game against Golden State. They get off to such a bad rhythm. They tried it against Indiana, and even then, the offense looked goofy until he got back on to the floor. And just like how you start these games is so important. How you set the tone is going to just cascade down into the rest of the way you perform in the game. And so I don't know how sustainable that is, but overall, they're getting healthier. They look better. They took it seriously. And you can say all day long, well, the Nuggets, they rested players, Jokic, whatever, man. They took care of business. I mean, we've seen this team, this injury-filled team, go into some of these games with not enough firepower, and even if they did have it, sometimes they don't go into it with the right kind of attitude. But that's not what we're seeing here. When they have a good game plan and they execute it, they're blowing these teams out. They're showing no mercy. They're having the competitive joy that we've been hearing from Coach Charles Lee since he was installed a season and a half ago. So this is great. I don't know how you can come away from this with anything but positive vibes about the Charlotte Hornets, unless you're Draymond Green.
Yeah, unless you're Draymond Green. Competitive spirit with Borrego. We have now transitioned to competitive joy under Charles Lee.
Joy joy. I would just say like joy greater than spirit for sure.
No doubt.
Spirit is like pom poms, high school. Pep rally. I don't want spirit. I want joy.
We don't have spirit. No, we don't. Yes, we've got spirit. How about you? No, we don't. We have joy is what we have. Joy. We don't have any spirit. We have competitive joy. It's better. But you mentioned the LaMelo shenanigans. Let's have that tie into Draymond Green's comments about the Hornets on his podcast. And he says this, quote, "The Hornets have LaMelo Ball coming off of the bench. He says he finds that to be quite interesting. They are a much worse team and so easy to guard when LaMelo is not on the floor. That's just the nature of sorry teams." He says that the Hornets are blatantly tanking. That's what he says, that the Hornets are blatantly tanking, that this is what they're doing right in front of your face. Apparently, they're going to penalize tanking, and I would say, great, that can't happen fast enough. The Hornets are a team that is tanking right in your face in plain sight. The fact that they have LaMelo Ball coming off of the bench, I find very interesting. That was the precursor to this. So you mentioned the LaMelo stuff coming off of the bench. You don't know how much they can keep that going, whatever. Man, let's just dwindle it down to this conversation. Why are the Hornets bringing LaMelo off of the bench? And it feels like people are running around in circles like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to figure out why in the world they would bring that guy, a star, somebody that does have an all-star appearance under his belt. Why are they bringing him off of the pine when he is so clearly the best basketball player on that team? And if you think Khan is, then it's 1A, 1B with LaMelo, but LaMelo is still the best basketball player on that team. Man, can we just acknowledge real quickly that it's because of the minutes restriction, please? What they're doing, it's a pattern. That's what's happening. They are trying to limit his minutes on back-to-backs to about 25 a pop, which has been consistent with what we've seen from LaMelo coming back since the latest injury on back-to-back scenarios. And because everybody lost their mind when LaMelo didn't play in the fourth quarter of that loss to Toronto, they decided that they needed to change up the divvying of those minutes, but not going over it. So what they decided to do was they decided to bring him off of the bench so they can best allocate him in winning time, allocate those minutes during crunch time. And that's exactly what they've done, is they've given him more minutes in the fourth quarter. So LaMelo is somebody that played 36 games in 2022 and 2023. He played 22 games in 2023-24, played 47 last year. And that's the most amount of games that he's played in a season since his sophomore campaign. I find it very interesting. The Hornets are tanking clearly because they're bringing LaMelo off of the bench. I need help, man. I need help because it's clear as day, unless you want to be an ostrich that just puts your head in a hole in the sand so you can run with whatever you want to rather than focusing on LaMelo has his minutes divvied up this way because the man has had a million different ankle injuries, and that training staff, that coaching staff, that franchise is trying to find the best way to allocate the minutes that they're going to still limit him with because he's been hurt so freaking long. It's about the macro with LaMelo. And if they're so blatantly tanking, they suck at it. It's easy to lose a West Coast road trip. Guess what? They've been doing it forever. You can lose a West Coast road trip. Well, they can't because Denver is playing all of their bench players and they sat at everybody out. Yeah, I guess that OKC victory where they beat them by 30, I guess there was no way to lose that one, right? On the road. They're terrible at it. They suck at it. I just don't understand why we continue to look away from everything that the Hornets are telling us. That he's playing 25 minutes a pop. Then we might want to say, well, LaMelo didn't even really play 20 minutes against Denver. He sat because they were winning by 30. We're intentionally doing this. I don't know if it's salacious, and that's the reason that people want to do the click rage bait stuff because it's a more interesting story if we manufacture some kind of drama. I guess that's why we're doing it. But if we want to tell the truth is LaMelo's been hurt forever. The training staff is trying to find something different to do with him so that they can win basketball games and allocate his minutes accordingly and limit it all at the same time. And that's what's happening here. But I guess that's not interesting enough for people.
Draymond Green.
I don't get it.
Draymond. You said it, ostrich. Putting your head in the sand.
Ostrich. Gotcha. Ostrich. Green. I like it. Draymond Green. All right. You want to move on? I'm just mad about the people doing this.
No,
man.
I liked your rant. Okay. Draymond, I think, was right. He went right, wrong. And then he just took the car completely off the cliff because, I think he's right. They are a much worse team and much easier to guard when LaMelo is not on the floor. He was right about that. Where he's wrong, and this is a reminder, I think, and I'm not saying Draymond is like this. I do know that there are players in the league. They don't watch League Pass all the time. They get into their hotel if they're on the road or at their home, and they get a scouting report, and it says, here's the team you're about to play, here are the players, here are the tendencies. If you'd like to watch some film, go ahead, but here's the breakdown. And that's how they learn about the team, and then they move on to the next one because they're playing every other night. So, Draymond is not paying special attention to the weekly trends of the Charlotte Hornets. But he does have a podcast, and he has to say things, and so he says things like that's just the nature of sorry teams because the Hornets are hanging around the bottom of the Eastern Conference. But obviously, if you look at a team like Charlotte and you compare them to a team like Utah that is DNPing Yusuf Nurkic for illnesses that may or may not exist, and they are literally DNP resting players, the Hornets are not DNP resting players. They are DNP playing players all the time. Look, they've got Josh Green. They've got Grant Williams back now. Ryan Kalkbrenner back off injury list. When these guys are healthy, they are playing everyone. They could play Liam McNeely. They could bring KJ Simpson. We know what a truly awful Hornets team looks like. You don't have to look very far. You just go back a couple of weeks and you see it. They've decided not to do that, and they're winning games as a result. So that's why Draymond is wrong. But I don't know. I don't get as worked up about it because I just understand that I understand what he's doing. And I also understand that if the Hornets keep winning, that kind of stuff gets drowned out. That stuff only has audience and only has volume because the Hornets have not won anything for a long time. Once they just do that, all that stuff goes away.
We'll talk about it more coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
I'll tell you why I get more worked up about it with Draymond and Kendrick trying to manufacture drama here in Charlotte. We'll get to all of it. Plus, we'll talk about Miles Bridges continuing to climb up the all-time scores list in Charlotte Hornets history. What does it mean? We'll get to all of it coming up next. LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises, and it adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without even overthinking it. So before the tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern, a little basketball, a little action, a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Let's tell you about the Everydayers Club. Thank you for making Locked On Hornets your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Locked On Hornets, first listen. Thank you for making Locked On the Sports Podcast Network your first listen. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayers Club. You get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Hornets, compatible with Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your pods, and you get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everyday Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of the show. All you have to do is go to lockedonhornets.supercast.com, lockedonhornets.supercast.com. The reason I get worked up over all the Draymond, the benching of LaMelo, is because it's gone on long enough with the whole LaMelo benching. I mean, a couple things as to what you can legitimately question if you want to. I guess you could just insinuate that the Hornets are hiding behind their real dislike of LaMelo and limiting the minutes to 25 on the back-to-back scenarios. and they're hiding behind that because they really don't like him. I guess you could say that if you wanted to. Oh, it's not the real reason, but this is the reason that they're going with. But so many times when they talk about LaMelo coming off of the bench, they're just not mentioning what has been going on for quite some time. I mean, seriously, just like the tiniest bit of research, or just don't ignore it, because I know that's the other thing people are doing. And I know the content game. The more drama-filled that something is, the more clicks it's going to get. I truly understand the content game. Okay, I promise you I do. But when we start to just throw this out there because we're hoping that it goes viral, and we're not acknowledging that we can go back to one back-to-back scenario, December 22nd and December 23rd, LaMelo played almost 25 minutes. Both of those games, almost 25 minutes. You go back to another back-to-back scenario, Milwaukee, 26, Chicago, 26, another back-to-back, Toronto, they lose because he only plays 25 minutes, and we're all, oh my God, Charles Lee benched him in the fourth quarter. It's because Charles doesn't like LaMelo, except he was sitting around, hovering around the 25-minute mark, and I would have liked to have seen him come back sooner in the fourth quarter, absolutely. He's the Hornets' best basketball player. But this is what he's been doing pretty consistently. This isn't some wild thing that he's doing now. We've had a pattern. I'm getting choked up. We've had a pattern this entire time of the way that they've handled LaMelo in these stretches. So then when Draymond says it, or when Kendrick Perkins goes on and tells you that the Hornets are trying to intentionally tank the trade value, that one's the wildest one. The Hornets are intentionally tanking the trade value of LaMelo because he has a text message. I don't know who texted him. I can tell you it would be I've said this a lot on Wes and Walker. It drives me insane. There's just nothing that you could say to make that make sense. Can you imagine a GM that is interested in acquiring LaMelo saying, oh, nah, man, but he's coming off of the bench. He's only playing 25 minutes. See, if you would have been starting him, maybe I would have traded for him. But because he's only playing 25 minutes, I don't know. I'm not going to trade for him now. That's stupid. All of it's stupid. And the way Darren Gant used to say Cam Newton makes people stupid, let me allow that to transition into LaMelo Ball makes people stupid, Doug Branson.
Well, it didn't make any sense. It further didn't make any sense what Kendrick said, because part of the reasoning that Perkins laid out for that is that the Hornets wanted to be able to trade LaMelo Ball and not have their fans be mad that they traded an all-star level player. And it's like, first of all, Kendrick, there are just a few sickos left that would even care about it at all. I mean, that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what the fan base engagement is right now, number one. And number two, it's also a fundamental misunderstanding, I think, of where fans are with, it's about 2 years behind where fans are with LaMelo Ball in general. Like 2 years ago, I would say, yeah, fans would be up in arms if the Hornets were to trade LaMelo Ball and give up that early on him. I just think that the tide has turned somewhat, although I think more and more fans are coming online to say, hey, if they are truly serious about finding ways to keep him in games and his long-term health, and they're looking at the numbers when he's on the floor with Con Knippel, and they're looking at the numbers when he's on the floor with Brandon Miller, and they're saying, damn, there is something here. I think fans are starting to get back into that mode, but it's just Kendrick just fundamentally misunderstanding everything. So that would be the one thing there. But
you know what else? LaMelo's playing well. Like, it's like, they're trying to tank his trade value, and he's shooting 44% from three, and he's playing as well as he has in quite some time. But I guess they suck at that too. So let me get it straight. They're blatantly tanking. They suck at that because they're winning on the road, and they're trying to tank LaMelo's trade value when he's playing as well as he has in quite some time. I guess they suck at all of these things they're trying to do to bring down the Hornets organization and bring down LaMelo's career.
The conspiracy theory doesn't track with what I've seen from Jeff Peterson so far. He seems like a Prestiite, like somebody that is, savvy and wants to make great deals all the time, is always looking for the angle, so much so that the Lakers were like, that's too much of an angle. We cannot bear the angle. And so, that doesn't track. That just seems like weird, old schooly NBA kind of like psychological games that I don't think tracks with what I know about Jeff Peterson, number one. Number two, I think that with LaMelo, the more interesting conversation is what is the benching doing to him in those games when he's benched, because he is to me he's a rhythm player, and I think it's taking him and the team out of rhythm. So that's why I say, like, how sustainable is it? And I think a fair question for fans to ask outside of the Draymond conversation is, like, how long must we endure this? Is this a season-long thing? And also, here's what I cannot bear. Here's what we cannot do. At the end of this season, when we're doing season recaps, or next season if LaMelo's still on the team, when we're looking back at the season, we cannot look at his total game played, because I saw some stat recently like he's played 17 straight games, and say, well, that's okay. Look at how many games he played last season. Okay, but they're juicing the numbers a little bit. I don't think that, like, the games where he's coming off the bench or the games where he's playing 20 minutes, they're not as impactful as the games where he is playing serious minutes. And so, like, I'm not gonna tolerate that. I will mention it every time. Hey, they juiced the numbers last season. Come to me when he's played 60 plus games of normal NBA star level $50 million a year player minutes. Then talk to me about the number of games he's played.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. He's had 2 games where he's come off of the bench. But
a lot of minutes restricted games too. I'm including those into the conversation.
Sure. So the rhythm question is a fair one. We don't have a large enough sample. Who knows if we even get one? But he's played 2 games off of the bench. 1 game against Indiana, spectacular. First 3 quarters, just a magical sequence of LaMelo Ball basketball where he comes in, guns a-blazing, and the dude looks fantastic. The other game, he came off of the bench against Golden State, only played 21 minutes, and wasn't very good from 3, 5 of 17 from the field, only 1 of 8 from distance. Not a great game, especially compared to that Indiana one. I mean, to me, we can point to LaMelo having played the most amount of games. Like, you're right. I guess they are juicing the numbers. At the same time, it's all for the bigger picture. And I guess help me kind of digest your take a little bit more here, just so I'm as clear and the listeners are clear, because I'm good with it. LaMelo is somebody that we've tried a bunch of different stuff, right? Ankle braces, no ankle braces. We don't play LaMelo in meaningless basketball games at the end of the season in March and April because the Hornets are already out of playoff contention. We've decided not to minutes restriction him coming off of some of these ankle injuries. He's gone through them, whatever. We've tried everything with LaMelo. Here's something a little different where we're not going to go a little crazy. Guess what I see so far? The thing that they're doing differently now, I've seen LaMelo play a consecutive amount of games that I haven't really seen him play in a long time. So me, being the crazy guy that I am, maybe we just stick with the thing that's working for the best player on the basketball team to play as many games as possible, because him playing 25 minutes a night is more impactful than him playing 30 once a month. Because that's what's been happening for LaMelo, is that the most amount of games that he played was 47. So, like, I'm good with this. If LaMelo is frustrated about not playing as much, that's also good. It's because he does have the competitive joy. He wants to go out there and play. And he might be frustrated at the plan. Hell, a lot of competitors would be. At the same time, man, we have 3 years of ankle injuries. We got to figure out how to, whether you view it in a cynical way or a real, like, passionate, loyal way of wanting to keep him for the long term, you want LaMelo to be as healthy as possible. And right now, we've seen him as healthy as we've seen him in quite some time. So 25 minutes on back-to-back scenarios, touching, flirting with 30 on normal games, days rest, 2, 3, whatever it may be. I'm good with the plan at hand right now.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with any of that. I would just, my question would be, are they doing this to get him to next season when they can stop doing this? Are they doing this so that he's more available to be traded? Are they doing that? I have to take them at their word, because this is what they've said. They said, we're trying to get him into more games and get him consistently playing in more games. And these are back-to-back situations. They could have said, we're not going to play him on the second night of back-to-backs. That we've seen this We've seen this with Embiid. We've seen this with a lot of players, and now LeBron as he's getting older. But LaMelo's not older, but he is close to, not exactly in the same situation that Embiid has been in. but he's in that same situation where it's like, oof, can we? But the Hornets are in a different situation as a team in that they're not trying to save LaMelo for the playoffs. That is what makes this a little different and weird, is that they're not doing this as like, oh, we got to have LaMelo healthy so we can get to the. It's like, no, you've told us postseason not exactly what you're focused on, and so that's why to me all of this feels weird and question marks and vacuum of information, which allows Draymond Green and all of the Draymond Greens of the world to slip in and say, what the heck is going on here? Because it is such a strange situation.
Definitely.
And we'll just have to see how it all shakes out, honestly. Like I don't have like an answer.
No, definitely. No, I think it's a fair question to ask how long this is going to go on. I don't know what the training staff plan is. I don't know what Charles Lee and Jeff Peterson plan is. Great question. Are we just trying to get to March and then we can start to let him go to 28 in back-to-backs, let him go to 30? Are we done after a certain point? Is it going to be this way for the rest of this season? And then next year is when we really, after another offseason's worth of rehab, working out, whatever it may be. No, it's a legitimate great question. My point is, I'm good. As long as it keeps LaMelo playing 25 minutes in these back-to-backs and like 30 overall, dude, I couldn't be more good. And the Hornets are winning. They're winning. Like, what's good? Okay. All right. Let's move on. We got one more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
They have lost both of the games that he's come off the bench. That's a fact. That's a fact.
That is a fact. We can dive into whether that means anything. So if there's something there, let's chew on that. We'll come back, and then we'll talk about Miles Bridges continuing to climb the all-time scoring list. Locked On Hornets on the #1 sports podcast network. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time? During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building, the energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Game Time comes in. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Browsing the Game Time app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat before buying makes choosing tickets easy and confident. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, Locked On NBA for $20 off. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, you threw a grenade at the very end. I threw it at you, and then before it blew up, you threw it right back at me, and then it blew up in my face. So any point that you wanted to make by mentioning that the Hornets have lost both of the games LaMelo comes off of the bench?
We need more data. I'm not making a point. I'm just making an observation. I would say, like, if they had won one of those games, if they had won both of those games, this would be an easier conversation for us, I think, to be fully on the same page. But again, I'm more than willing to step back, unlike Draymond, and say, I need more information. We've got to see more games of him coming off the bench. Can they figure out? Because there's obviously, like, when you look at how they started both of those games, Draymond is right. They are easier to guard at the very beginning of the game. And look, they're easier to guard in general, but I think it's especially harmful at the beginning of the game to get into that hole. And I think you saw in the Indiana game, like, they spent the whole game getting into holes when he was off the floor, and then him coming back, him getting on the floor, pulling them out of holes. And it was just it's a difficult way to win. And so that's where I say the sustainability of it. Can they prove that this plan is not only in the long-term interest of LaMelo, but that short-term they can figure it out and win basketball games? Because honestly, like, I think some fans, some sickos, are interested in the long-term health of LaMelo Ball, but I think selfishly, most fans just want to see the team win. They want to see the team win, not at the full expense of LaMelo Ball's health. Not saying like, oh, you got to go play him 40 minutes a game no matter what, run it till the wheels fall off. No, but it's like you still care about winning each individual game. Our good friend of the show, former host David Walker, texted us both and said, and this is, I think, a feeling that I have, and I think a feeling that I don't know how many fans have, but it's like, I get it. I get what you're doing. But it feels weird, and it feels like there's just got to be some kind of better way to achieve the things that we're trying to achieve here than by getting off to such a bad start in these games.
Yeah, that's fair. It's very weird. I will not deny that. It's not unprecedented.
Siri doesn't understand. Did you hear Siri? She didn't understand
I heard
either.
her back. Yeah.
All right, Siri, calm down. We're trying to explain it to you.
No, it's definitely weird. Again, I go back to have we not exhausted every opportunity to try to get LaMelo as healthy as possible? So they're trying something different. They're trying, hey, on the second night, and it's not all wrapped in this unfounded evidence. How many times have we seen players just sit out the second night of back-to-backs altogether? So do you want that? All right, because we got angry at Charles Lee for allocating the minutes the way that he did in the loss to Toronto. So, okay, now what you have to do, if you're going to abide by the minutes restriction, here are the options that you have. You can either sit him out at the start of the games, you can sit him out at the very end, or not at the very, very end, but play him a minute and a half at the end of those games, still getting him in winning time, but you'd rather him play a little bit more in the fourth quarter. Or you could play him at the bookends of games. Okay, great. But now you're talking about a really long stretch in the middle where he has to sit out if you're going to be strict with the minutes restriction. And they have been pretty strict with the minutes restriction. And if they're going to continue to do that, which it is working as of right now, LaMelo is playing basketball games. He's playing consecutive basketball games. So then if you think it's bad to have him off of the floor for a long stretch of time, but you want him at the start and at the very end, now we're talking about a significant portion of the game in the middle where he's not playing. So people just don't know what they want.
Well, that's okay. You're totally right about that. This is the old adage where they will poll people. They'll do public policy polling, and they'll say, "What do you want?" And people will say, "I want lots of public services, good roads, good public schools, and I would like low taxes." It's like, well, you can't have both of those things.
You can't. That's the thing.
But that's what people want.
That's what people want. And they don't know what they want here. I know for a fact, too, that the same accounts that are angry with the minutes restriction for LaMelo, who are complaining about LaMelo only playing 20 minutes against Denver, my God, can you imagine if Charles Lee left LaMelo in this game, in a game that was already won by 30, but he got hurt in the fourth quarter of a game that the Hornets were up 20? Charles Lee would be crucified. And I'd be right there with you because that would be stupid for a guy that's been hurt this long. But guess what? He didn't play him because there was no need to anymore. There was no need to. I just feel like people are trying. I'll try to put a bow on this. It's really hard, but I'll try to put a bow on this. I think people are trying to point to the Hornets organization and say, there's something funny going on behind the scenes, where they do have an answer for everything, but then you just are ignoring it. Well, no. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. There's something funny going on behind the scenes. So you're just intentionally leaving crucial information out of the equation in order to task them with blatantly tanking, not liking LaMelo, and that just doesn't fly with me. LaMelo probably does hate the minutes restriction thing. That's understandable. If you wanted to say that there's a real rift between LaMelo and Charles, maybe. I don't have any evidence to the contrary. There might be. They keep saying at the microphone that they're all cool with one another, but you might have something that I don't have. Cool. I'm willing to hear that out. But we're intentionally leaving crucial information at the door, and I'm just not going to try to do that anymore.
I think all of that is fair, and I'm willing to admit that I do want all of those things, and I think it. And I am one of those people that is answering the public policy poll with these two divergent ideas, but that comes from the weird dissonance of paying a player $50 million and that being such a large percentage of your cap, which influences what you can do elsewhere on your roster, and knowing how impactful that player is when he plays, and then also wondering to myself, is this guy just is he going to be broken for the rest of his career? Is this what we're going to have to endure for the rest of his career? Or is this something that they're trying to temporarily work through to where they can get one more offseason of building up strength and figuring this thing out? And it's all of those things that lead me to be frustrated with it. It's also watching these games. Again, I wish they could prove the concept. I hope in one of these next back-to-backs where they do play him off the bench that they can prove the concept, because if they can't, there's going to be a certain point at which I say, just don't play him in the second. Because here's the thing, like I think as a team, you know how to play with a guy and then you know how to not play with a guy. To me, the issue is, and what they're experimenting here, and I'm questioning whether the experiment is working, is can you play with a guy that is so impactful like LaMelo Ball? It's not a bench player. It's not a role player. Can you play with that guy in such a dramatically different role 2 nights in a row? I'm not sure the answer to that question. Right now, the answer to that question is no, because they haven't proven that it's the case.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But I think that's a fair question. I think the fair question is this the best way to do it? But also, like it's hard for me to wrap my head around. LaMelo should be out there at all times, but go ahead and sit him for an entire game in these. Okay, all right. He's the best player on the team. He shouldn't be playing that. Okay, all right. That's the part.
Well, see, this is what Draymond cannot do. This is why Draymond does what he does, because he cannot approach a microphone and go, which is where I am. That's me. I'm going,
yeah,
because we've been in this a long time, and we have to recognize that too. Like, we've been dealing with LaMelo Ball injury issues for multiple coaches and multiple GMs and multiple ownership groups now. And you're right. I think they are experimenting and fishing, and I hope the experiment ultimately works out.
Doesn't this show more effort to try to make it work with LaMelo? Doesn't it? They're putting in way more effort to try to make this work. And instead, people are having the exact opposite takeaway. Miles Bridges, let's get to him, man. Miles Bridges is climbing up the scoring list. He passed Larry Johnson for 4th all-time last week. This week, he brings himself to 3rd all-time, right behind Del Curry at 2nd, and, of course, Kemba Walker, who is 1st place. Does it mean anything to you that Miles Bridges is 3rd on the franchise's all-time scoring list, Doug? And if it does, what does it mean to you?
It means that he has been with the organization a long time and has been, when he has been active and available, he has played in a vast majority of those games. And he has had the ball in his hands a lot and done things and developed as a player. He certainly is a different player now than he was as a rookie. In the grand scheme of things, I don't really know what to do with this, because the Hornets have not achieved very much, really nothing, while he's been a member of the team. No playoff victories, no playoff game victories, no playoff appearances. So I don't know what to, when we zoom out and we talk about like how is Miles Bridges going to be viewed 20 years from now, because like we have the longevity argument with Del Curry versus Kemba Walker. But the thing is with Del Curry, like he played on playoff teams, like he contributed to playoff series victories. Mm-hmm. That cannot be said. And so we have these conversations all the time with like Myles Garrett and the sack record. And we say, well, what does it mean that he sets a sack record on a terrible team? And he doesn't seem very interested in winning. So what do we really do with that when we talk about, his legacy and the legacy of that record? But with Miles Bridges, it's kind of different because yes, that's true. And you could take that into account, but also his absence for a year and the contract dispute that followed and all of the off-court distractions that whatever you think about who's to blame and like they existed because he was on the team. All of that affected for several years their ability to field a winning team. I question whether they were interested in doing that really, but he still affected that in some way. So I think you have to take all that into account when you're looking back at this again, a decade, 2 decades from now, and trying to place him among the Kemba Walkers and the Del Currys and the Zoes and the LJs.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. It's always coming down to a question of quality versus quantity. How great was your time here, despite maybe how short it was, and how long was your time here? And Miles Bridges right now being 3rd on the all-time scoring list, ahead of Gerald Wallace. I mean, he surpasses an all-time favorite Bobcat, not Horncat, because he never played for the Hornets, but an all-time great Bobcat. If there is such a thing that exists, and that's fair to question, there actually is, and it's that. It's Gerald Wallace, all-time great Bobcat, and a little bit of Al Jefferson, who did make that transition into the Hornets era. And you just look at the list of the top 10 scorers, Doug, and some of them don't look like the others. Kemba Walker, number 1, makes sense. Del Curry, number 2, makes sense. Miles Bridges, number 3, makes sense. Don't get the same feeling that I do with the other two guys. Let's move on. Gerald Wallace, yeah, all-time great Bobcat. Larry Johnson, top 5 all-time. Everybody remembers that moment, that era in Hornets history. 6, Terry Rozier. Okay, maybe feels a little different there. Then you get to Glenn Rice, 7, Muggsy, 8. LaMelo, 9, by the way. Interesting. Raymond Felton, 10. Doesn't feel like that belongs as much. So when we do the top 10 Hornets list, do you think Miles Bridges is up on the top 10 all time? No disrespect to Miles Bridges. I don't think so. There are playoff moments. There are high quality, they were star moments. There are your relationship, your personal relationship with the city moments that you can argue on behalf of some of the other players in question when comparing to Miles. And so Miles gets to top 3 on the all-time scoring list. And it's because he's been averaging 20. It's because he's been playing for the team for quite some time, on the team for 8 years, played for 7 because of the year that he was out. So all of that is really hard to figure out what to do with, if you care to do anything, right? We're asking the question because we're a daily podcast and we have daily content to go over. But this is somebody achieving something historically within the franchise, and it doesn't feel like we should just overlook it. But I do think it comes with more complicated feelings than it does when Kemba gets the number 1 spot or Dell had the number 2 spot, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's just different because he has been a large part of the unquestionably the most unsuccessful stretch of this franchise in its history. It wasn't the lowest lows, obviously 7-59, but in terms of the stretch, in terms of the decade-long stretch of nothing, he doesn't bear all of the weight for that. I'm not trying to be unfair here. He doesn't, like, there were decisions that were made, decisions that weren't made by the front office. There were injuries. And so the credit that I give him is that on the nights in which he was available, he showed up and he played hard. Like, you cannot take that away from Miles Bridges. He played hard, but his talent level hit a cap, and that cap was not ever really ever able to lift this franchise into any kind of territory except the territory that it's been in. And so I think that's how you have to view it. And you have to take into account his responsibility in that, both on the court and off the court.
All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube. Doug Branson, he's got his own Substack, people, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also go check out Yahoo Sports Daily with Jason Fitz and Caroline Fenton. And I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m., Sports Radio 92.7 FM. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.